The rain came down in silver sheets on the metal planes of Kareth Prime, each drop tapping against broken steel. Captain Daniel Ross stumbled through the wreckage of his escape pod, his boots sinking slightly into the wet dust. He didn't know where he was, only that his ship had been torn apart by enemy fire, and he had been lucky, if this counted as luck, to survive the crash. Smoke still curled from the twisted hull behind him, a grim reminder that the enemy would be searching for survivors. He couldn't let them find him first. The night came fast on this world. Dark clouds stretched across the sky like bruises, and the horizon glowed with faint green light from distant alien cities. Daniel's comm unit was dead, his rifle cracked from the impact. Every step he took felt heavier, as if the planet itself didn't want him here. Then he heard it, the deep hum of an approaching craft. He ducked behind the remains of a large transport container, his pulse quickening. The hum grew louder until a black, claw-shaped skimmer landed less than 50 meters away. Shapes moved in the rain, tall and slender, their eyes glowing faint gold in the dark. 3 figures emerged, moving with quiet grace. Their armor shimmered with scales like molten glass, and each carried a long curved weapon that looked as much ceremonial as it was deadly. They spoke in a language Daniel didn't understand, but he knew enough from their tone. They weren't here to rescue him. One of them raised a hand and pointed in his direction. Daniel didn't wait. He ran. His boots splashed through puddles as he darted between broken metal beams, but they were faster. In seconds, something wrapped around his legs, a net. He hit the ground hard, gasping as the rain soaked his face. Strong hands lifted him. He saw their faces now, 3 women, each with sharp, alien beauty. Their features were similar enough to mark them as sisters. The first had silver hair braided down her back and eyes like burning amber. The second's hair was jet black, her gaze colder than the rain. The third, the youngest, had hair the color of starlight and a faint scar across her cheek. None of them spoke to him directly. Instead, they bound his wrists with smooth, flexible metal and led him toward the skimmer. He tried to fight, but their strength was inhuman. Within moments, he was inside the craft, the doors sealing him into shadows. The skimmer's interior was dim, lit only by lines of glowing script along the walls. He could hear their voices behind him, discussing him as if he were some rare specimen. One word kept repeating, the tone heavier each time. He didn't know the translation, but the sound of it made his chest tighten. When they finally looked at him, the silver-haired sister leaned close, her voice low but clear enough in broken standard. "You are the chosen," she said, as if it were a sentence and not a title. Daniel didn't understand, but something in her eyes told him he wouldn't like the meaning. The ride was short. The skimmer descended into what looked like an underground city, walls carved from black stone that shimmered under soft lights. Alien guards stood at every entrance, their eyes following him with curiosity and something darker, expectation. He was led down a long hall, its floor covered in dark green rugs, the air heavy with the scent of strange flowers. At the end of the hall, they brought him into a wide chamber where a glowing timepiece hung on the wall. It read 12 o'clock in alien script. The silver-haired sister stepped forward and spoke again. 12 hours, she said slowly, as if making sure he understood. 1 hour with each sister. She didn't finish the sentence. The pause was enough to chill him. Daniel stared at them, confused and wary. He had seen strange alien customs before, but never something like this. The youngest sister moved closer, her expression softer, but still carrying an unspoken warning. "Our people will decide your fate when the hours end," she said in a voice that almost felt human. The black-haired one crossed her arms, studying him like prey. He could tell that whatever test they had planned was not meant for his comfort, or even his survival. The clock on the wall ticked forward with a soft chime. 11 hours and 59 minutes remained. And Daniel had no idea what was about to begin. Asterisk. Daniel's wrists still ached from the smooth metal restraints as the three sisters circled him in the chamber. The silver-haired one, clearly the eldest, watched him with the calm patience of someone used to control. The black-haired sister's eyes were sharper, as if searching for weakness. The youngest tilted her head, curiosity and something unspoken behind her gaze. The ticking of the alien clock seemed louder than their breathing. 12 hours was not long in most situations, but here, every second felt stretched. The eldest spoke first, her voice carrying authority. "You are in our custody under the law of corresponding. Your fate will be decided by how you endure the 12 trials." Daniel didn't like the sound of that. He had no weapons, no allies, and no understanding of their culture. "And if I fail?" he asked quietly. The black-haired sister answered without hesitation. "You will not leave this city alive." Her tone wasn't cruel, it was simply a fact. The words sank into him heavier than the rain that had soaked his clothes. The youngest stepped closer, touching the strange cuffs on his wrists. They loosened, with a soft click, falling away. For a moment, Daniel thought they might be freeing him, but the eldest shook her head. "You are not free. We do not bind the chosen with chains for what comes next." Her words were both strange and unsettling. The black-haired one produced a small vial, the liquid inside glowing faintly blue. She handed it to Daniel without explanation. "Drink." He hesitated, his instincts screaming against it, but the three of them stood watching, their stares unblinking. He took a slow sip. The taste was metallic, sharp, and it burned down his throat. Almost immediately, the chamber around him shifted in his vision. The walls seemed taller, the air thicker. The sisters looked sharper, their features more defined, too perfect, almost unreal. His heart began to pound faster, and he realized the drink had done something to his senses. The eldest nodded. "You will need heightened strength and awareness. Each hour will test you differently." She stepped aside, revealing a door he hadn't noticed before. It slid open with a whisper, showing a long corridor lined with dim green lights. "Your first trial begins now," she said. The youngest sister walked beside him as he entered the corridor. "Do not resist what happens," she said softly. "It will only make things worse." Daniel didn't know whether she was warning him out of kindness or cruelty. The floor beneath them vibrated as if something massive was moving below. Strange sounds echoed from somewhere far ahead, a low growl followed by a screech. "What is that?" Daniel asked, his voice tight. The youngest only replied, "It is hungry." They entered a large circular arena lit from above by a pale white glow. The black-haired sister was already there, standing near the far wall, a curved weapon in her hands. At the center of the arena, a cage began to rise from the floor. Inside was a creature unlike anything Daniel had seen, 8 limbs, spines along its back, and eyes that burned with faint green fire. Its movements were slow but deliberate, the sound of its claws scraping the floor like nails on glass. The eldest's voice came from above, though Daniel couldn't see her. "First trial survival." The cage doors slid open. The creature lunged faster than he expected. Daniel dodged to the side, his heightened senses making every detail sharper. The flick of its tail, the hiss of its breath, the shifting weight in its limbs. He spotted a short metal staff lying near the wall and dove for it. The youngest shouted something in her language, and the black-haired sister tossed him a glance that was almost amused. The creature struck again, forcing Daniel to roll across the sand-covered floor. His hands tightened around the staff. He knew this fight wasn't just about winning, it was about proving something to them. When the creature leapt the third time, Daniel planted the staff in the ground and used the momentum to swing himself aside. The beast's head slammed into the pole, stunning it for a brief moment. He didn't waste the chance. He struck hard, again and again, until the creature collapsed in a heap of twitching limbs. Silence filled the arena, except for his breathing. The black-haired sister approached, studying him as if re-evaluating her earlier judgment. "You live," she said simply, before walking away. The youngest gave him a small nod. Above them, the clock chimed, 1 hour gone, 11 to go. Daniel leaned against the cool stone wall as the youngest sister led him out of the arena. His arms ached, his breath still heavy from the fight, but there was no time to rest. The glowing timepiece in the hall reminded him only 11 hours. Left, the creature's blood still marked his hands, and the metallic taste of the blue drink clung to his tongue. He wasn't sure if it was courage or the strange liquid that had kept him alive, but he knew the trials would only grow harder. The black-haired sister was already waiting in the corridor ahead. She didn't smile, but there was a different look in her eyes, now less contempt, more curiosity. "You fight well for a species not bred for combat," she said in her accented standard. Daniel gave a short nod, unsure if it was meant as a compliment or a warning. The eldest sister appeared from a side passage, her silver braids swaying as she walked. "Your next trial is not one of strength," she said. "It is one of choice." The words made him uneasy. In his experience, choices in enemy territory rarely came without a cost. They led him into a chamber far smaller than the arena. The walls here were covered with long strips of shimmering fabric, each glowing faintly. In the center of the room stood a stone table with 3 objects laid neatly on its surface: a dagger of black glass, a small silver sphere, and a clear vial filled with dark red liquid. The eldest gestured toward them. "You may take only 1. The object you choose will decide how the rest of your hours unfold." Daniel studied them, trying to guess their purpose. The black-haired sister stepped closer, her voice low. "Choose wrong, and the next trial may be your last." He stared at the dagger. It looked sharp enough to cut through steel, but he doubted it was just a weapon. The silver sphere pulsed faintly, almost like a heartbeat. The vial of red liquid seemed dangerous, but the youngest sister's eyes lingered on it for a moment. Longer than the others, that small hint swayed him. He reached for the vial, the glass cool in his palm. The eldest raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. The black-haired sister smirked faintly. The youngest only nodded, as if he had passed some invisible test. They left the chamber through another narrow hall, the air thicker here, carrying a faint scent of burning metal. At the end, a heavy door opened into a vast underground garden, lit by glowing blue crystals. The plants here were tall and twisted, their leaves curling like claws. Strange flowers opened and closed as he passed, releasing thin trails of vapor. "This place is alive," Daniel said quietly. The youngest replied, "It is more than alive, it is watching you." Her tone made him slow his steps. The plants seemed to shift subtly toward him, their movements almost too slow to see. In the center of the garden stood a pool of still dark water. The eldest pointed to it. "Drop the liquid into the water," she instructed. Daniel uncorked the vial and poured the red contents in. The water rippled violently, glowing for a moment before a deep rumble echoed through the garden. Roots began to shift beneath his feet, and the pool started to drain away, revealing a spiral staircase descending into darkness. "The path to your next trial," the eldest said. "But be warned, the garden does not like trespassers." Before Daniel could respond, one of the towering plants snapped toward him, its vine-like stem whipping the air. He jumped back, the vine missing him by inches. The black-haired sister drew her curved weapon, slicing through the vine before it could strike again. "Go," she barked. Daniel didn't argue. He ran toward the staircase, the youngest following. Close behind. More vines lashed out, some tipped with sharp thorn-like spikes. A vine wrapped around his leg, but the youngest slashed it free, her blade glowing faintly blue. They reached the stairs and descended quickly into the cold dark. The air grew damp as they reached the bottom. The walls were smooth stone, and the sound of dripping water echoed all around. The eldest was waiting for them, though Daniel hadn't seen her come down. "Hour 3 begins now," she said, her voice carrying an edge of satisfaction. "And this time, your survival depends on more than your strength." The way she looked at him made it clear whatever came next was meant to test not his body, but his mind. The clock somewhere above ticked on, 10 hours remaining. Daniel's eyes adjusted slowly to the dim light. The chamber ahead was wide, but empty, its floor covered in patterns carved into the stone circles, lines and symbols that glowed faintly blue. In the center stood a single chair made of some dark metal, its surface smooth like glass. The eldest sister gestured toward it. "Sit." Her voice left no room for argument. Daniel stepped forward cautiously, the air here colder than anywhere else in the underground halls. As he sat, the black-haired sister moved behind him, placing both hands on the chair's curved frame. He felt a faint vibration, then a sudden rush of images flashed before his eyes, memories of his childhood, his time in the military, the friends he had lost in the war. The images came so fast he couldn't tell if they were his own thoughts or something being shown to him. "What is this?" he asked through clenched teeth. The eldest answered, "A test of truth. We will see who you truly are, human." The youngest sister stepped closer, her amber eyes glowing faintly in the low light. "Do not fight the visions," she said softly. "If you resist, the chair will break you." Her tone was gentle, but the warning felt deadly serious. The next wave of visions hit harder, memories twisted into strange shapes. He saw his old commanding officer's face, but the man's eyes were alien, his voice replaced by a language Daniel didn't understand. Then he saw the 3 sisters, but not as they were now. They were dressed in white ceremonial robes, standing in a circle around a fire. He didn't know if this was their past or something the chair was inventing. Black-haired sister's voice came from behind him. "You carry guilt. Much of it is not yours to carry." Daniel clenched his fists. "And what do you know about that?" The eldest answered before her. "Enough to know you have survived not by luck, but by choice. That is rare." The chair pulsed again, and suddenly he was standing in a desert under 2 suns, watching a massive alien warship crash into the ground. He realized this was no memory. This was a vision of something that hadn't yet happened. The eldest's voice echoed in the air. "Would you stop this, knowing it would cost your life?" Daniel swallowed hard. "Yes," he said without thinking. The visions faded instantly, the cold in the air lifting. The eldest studied him in silence for a long moment, then gave the smallest nod. The black-haired sister removed her hands from the chair, and the youngest stepped forward to help him stand. His legs were shaky, his breath uneven. "You passed the trial of truth," the eldest said. "But the hours ahead will be harder still." They left the chamber and entered a long hall, lit with soft gold light. Daniel noticed the walls here were engraved with countless names in alien script. The youngest noticed him staring. "Those are the ones who failed," she said quietly. The weight of her words pressed on him more than the chair had. The hall ended at another set of doors, this time guarded by 2 armored figures with blank, expressionless masks. The eldest spoke to them in her language, and the doors swung open. Inside was a massive underground bay filled with sleek, black ships. The hum of their engines was faint but constant, like the sound of a predator breathing. At the center of the bay was a raised platform, and on it sat a table covered with strange mechanical parts. The black-haired sister stepped up to the table and pointed at them. "Your next trial is to assemble the key that opens the pathgate. Without it, no one leaves this city." Daniel frowned. "And if I can't?" The eldest's expression didn't change. "Then you remain here forever." The parts were unlike any tech he'd seen. Some were crystalline, others made of thin strands of glowing wire. He began sorting them, his military training helping him focus under pressure. The youngest stayed near, watching silently, while the black-haired one moved around the room like a shadow, keeping the guard's eyes on her instead of him. His hands worked quickly, though each piece seemed to resist being joined to another, as if the material itself had rules it wanted him to learn. Finally, after what felt like a long hour, the pieces clicked together into a perfect, glowing ring. The eldest stepped forward, taking it from him without a word. She turned toward the great black doors at the end of the bay. 9 hours remain, she said, and the way her voice echoed made Daniel certain the next trial would be nothing like the ones before. The great black doors opened slowly, revealing a cavern so vast it felt like the inside of a mountain. Dim red light spilled from cracks in the stone walls, and the air was hot, carrying the scent of smoke and something metallic. The sound of distant roaring made the ground tremble under Daniel's boots. The eldest sister stepped through first, holding the glowing ring he had built. The other two followed, keeping close to him as if the heat itself could swallow them if they strayed too far. They crossed a narrow bridge of black stone, the drop on either side vanishing into darkness. Daniel's eyes kept flicking to the edges where faint shapes moved in the shadows below. "What is down there?" he asked. The youngest replied, "Things even we do not name." Her voice was soft, but the way her hand stayed near her weapon told him she wasn't exaggerating. At the far end of the bridge stood a massive gate made of twisted metal. Strange runes glowed faintly along its frame. The eldest placed the ring into a socket at its center. The runes flared bright, and the gate shuddered as it began to open. The heat doubled in an instant. From the darkness beyond, a creature stepped forward, its body plated with black scales, each one edged in molten light. Its eyes glowed like molten gold, and its breath came in waves of fire-hot air. Daniel's instincts screamed at him to run, but the bridge behind them had already begun retracting. The black-haired sister drew her curved weapon, its blade catching the red light like liquid flame. "This is the Guardian," she said flatly. "Your next trial is simple. Pass it or die here." Daniel gripped a heavy spear the youngest thrust into his hands. The weapon felt alive, faintly humming in his grip. The Guardian let out a low growl that vibrated through the stone. Then it moved fast. Daniel barely had time to roll aside as its clawed hand struck the ground where he'd stood, cracking the stone. The black-haired sister darted in, her blade slicing across one of its legs, but the creature didn't even slow. It turned its burning eyes on Daniel, as if deciding he was the real target. He shifted his stance, remembering the creature in the arena. Speed over power. The Guardian lunged, and he sidestepped, jabbing the spear at its side. The tip struck between scales, and the beast let out a roar that shook loose chunks of stone from the ceiling. The youngest shouted something in her language, tossing him a small device that glowed bright blue. He caught it and pressed it against the spear. The weapon's hum deepened, its glow intensifying. The next strike sank deeper, making the Guardian stagger, but the heat was suffocating and his arms burned with strain. The black-haired sister slashed at its other side, her movements precise, forcing it to split its attention. The eldest remained at the gate, chanting in a low voice that made the runes glow brighter. Daniel realized she was holding the way open, and if she stopped, they would all be trapped. The Guardian swung its massive tail, striking him hard in the side. He crashed to the ground, the wind knocked from his lungs. The beast loomed over him, molten light dripping from its jaws. The youngest leapt between them, her blade flashing as she drew the Guardian's focus for just a second. It was enough. Daniel thrust the spear upward with all his strength, driving it deep into the glowing gap in its chest. The Guardian let out one last thunderous roar before collapsing, the heat from its body fading almost instantly. The ground stopped shaking, and the eldest's voice called out, "Through the gate now." They stepped over the Guardian's still form and crossed into a cooler, quieter chamber beyond. The door closed behind them with a deep, echoing boom. Daniel's chest still heaved, his body aching, but he noticed the way the sisters looked at him now, less like a prisoner, more like something else. Respect, maybe, or possibility. The eldest placed a hand on his shoulder. 8 hours remain, she said. And only one trial more before your fate is decided. Her tone was unreadable, but Daniel could tell whatever was coming next would decide everything. The chamber they entered was unlike any other Daniel had seen in the underground city. It was circular, with high walls carved from pale stone and a dome above that shimmered with shifting lights like a living sky. In the center stood a low platform, surrounded by patterns of glowing symbols etched into the floor. The air was cool, almost peaceful, but the sisters' faces were serious. This was no place for rest. The eldest stepped onto the platform and turned to face him. "This is the trial of union," she said. "It is the last of the 12 trials. If you pass, you will walk free. If you fail, you will never leave." Daniel frowned. "What does union mean?" The black-haired sister spoke before the eldest could answer. "It means you will bond with one of us, in spirit and in life." Her eyes locked onto his, steady and unblinking. "It is a vow that cannot be broken." The youngest stepped forward, her expression softer than her sister's. "It is more than survival. It is trust. You must choose who you will stand with, and that choice will bind you for as long as you live." Daniel felt the weight of her words. This wasn't about romance or convenience. It was about becoming part of something he didn't fully understand. A culture where a bond was as binding as blood. The eldest gestured toward the three of them. "Choose, one choice, one life." The clock on the wall above the dome began to tick again. 7 hours still remained, but he knew they wouldn't give him that long. He looked at each sister in turn. The eldest was strength and command. The black-haired one was sharp and unyielding, and the youngest. She had shown him moments of kindness when the others had not. Daniel stepped forward and met the youngest sister's gaze. "You," he said. Firmly, a quiet breath escaped her lips, almost a smile. The eldest gave a small nod, as if she had expected this. The black-haired sister's expression didn't change, but there was a flicker in her eyes, something between approval and disappointment. Youngest took his hand and guided him onto the platform. The glowing symbols brightened, wrapping around them in a spiral of light. Daniel felt a rush through his chest, as if his heartbeat was no longer his alone. Her voice was in his mind now, clear and warm. "We are one. You are no longer alone in this world." He realized this was the true purpose of the trials, not to break him, but to see if he could stand as their equal. When the light faded, the eldest spoke again. "You are bonded to our bloodline. From this moment, you are under our protection, and we under yours. You are not our prisoner, you are our kin." Daniel stepped down from the platform, still holding the youngest's hand. The weight of the last 12 hours finally lifting from his shoulders. They led him out of the chamber and toward a wide tunnel that sloped upward. For the first time since his capture, he saw real sunlight ahead. As they emerged into the open air, the city of Kareth Prime stretched out below alien towers, crystal spires, and rivers of silver water glinting under a pale sky. The war that had brought him here felt distant now. The black-haired sister stepped beside him. "You survived what few even attempt. That makes you one of us. Remember that." The eldest stood on his other side, her voice steady. "The galaxy will know you as the human who passed the 12 trials. It will fear you, and it will respect you." Daniel looked at the youngest, and she met his gaze with a small, certain smile. "Your old life ended when you crashed here," she said. "Your new one begins now." And for the first time since the war began, he believed her.